and welcome to this learning session brought to you by the IgnitED Labs at Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College. My name is Sabrina and I'm an educational technology champion for the labs. This particular learning session is going to go over Adobe XD as applied for educational purposes. So as a broad introduction, Adobe XD or Adobe Experience Design is really useful for prototyping and wireframing ideas for applications for both laptops and mobile devices. For educators specifically, Adobe XD does have a wide array of uses. So any particular school subject can be enhanced with the use of Adobe XD. And that might look like an educator assigning students to create some prototype of an application or other type of project that really demonstrates their content knowledge or understanding in that context. And another side note that I'd like to mention is that as students or staff members of Arizona State University, there is university-sponsored access to Adobe products, including XD. So you can feel free to explore the software for free. With that being said, when we open up the application, I'll go ahead and share my screen and show you what that looks like. We will see this. So in general, we can dive right in, and it is worth noting that Adobe XD does really have these very useful templates. So whether that's, for an iPhone or a general web page or even an Instagram story, there are templates that are available, or you can just dive right in and go into a custom size. It is definitely worth noting that you do not have to create anything from scratch unless you absolutely would like to. Adobe XD does offer UI kits. So by selecting this, this will take you to an external site that'll go over how to download the UI kits. And that might be useful if you'd like to really focus on the content of the application. Maybe you're short on time even and really want to focus on delivering your message rather than focusing too much on what a certain icon looks like or anything of that sort. With that being said, I do want to note that for this particular presentation, my partner for this project, Ashley, did create the beginnings of a prototype that go over the civil rights movement in the United States. And so that's what we are going to be using to go over some of the major functions of Adobe XD. And on top of that, I do want to note that we already have some built-in issues or errors among the applications so that we can really highlight some of the major functions, but that not at all really goes over what Adobe XD has to offer. So this is a very, very brief overview of what software is useful for, but there are many resources online or from Adobe themselves about the full potential that the software holds. With that being said, we'll go ahead and dive into our very first component that we're going to be going over today, and that's prototyping and wireframing. So there are three options that you'll see up top. We have design, prototype, and share. By selecting prototype, we can go over the actual flow of the app itself. So we'll see here we have 5 different screens, aka artboards. And by selecting any one of them, so page 1, we can see the relationships that it has with the other pages in the application. With that being said, we know that there is currently an issue with the way that page 1.1 and page 2 are linked and that they're not linked at all. So we see here that this is, we know, and let me zoom in here for a second. We have our Jim Crow laws, and we want to go ahead and connect that so that when a user clicks on Jim Crow laws, it's going to take them to this page going over Plessy versus Ferguson. So we can go ahead and you can see here, I just selected this box just by right-clicking it. If I right-click on the Jim Crow laws itself, I'll get this little blue box. And by doing this and connecting it to that page, that means, like I said, that when a user clicks on it in an actual demonstration or preview mode, they'll be able to go from this page to this page. Let me adjust our zooming in, so zoom to fit all. So that's the first component that I really want to show you, and that deals with the flow of the artboards or the relationship that they hold to each other, in other words. Moving on to our design panel, the next thing that I want to show is the assets panel. So when we were in prototype, all we had was this select tool here and the zoom tool. When we head over to our design panel, we can see that we now have all of these shapes. We have what is called a pen tool, text, the Artboard tool, and then our zoom tool on top of that. So in this case, you might be familiar with, the fact that if you click on this, it's going to make a rectangle, same for a circle, and so on. The pen tool specifically, let me just show you. If I were to zoom in to a particular artboard and I were to select the pen tool, I can create these nodes and create any shape that I really want to. By selecting this tool and clicking on outside, so I select it over here and then onto the shape itself, I can go ahead and delete that altogether. And you can do that for any design feature. I could click on this button and delete it if I wanted to. I could also use the pen tool to add some sort of feature. So that is our pen tool. Additionally, the next thing that I want to go over is the artboard itself. So as I mentioned, these are screens for the end user, but in this case, in Adobe XD, they are called artboards. One thing I want to note, so we're going to be focusing on this little Wi-Fi symbol here. So if we were to hover over the rest of our screens, we'll notice that everything on the topmost part of our screen is just completely gray, with the exception of this very orange Wi-Fi symbol. So if we want to go ahead and edit that, we can zoom in a bit. By simply using our select tool that we have enabled, I can double click this area and you'll see there are different layers. So it's selecting different things. So you'll see, an outline of the object that you are selecting. If I select this, I should see here in this right panel that I can see where it's placed on the screen. I can see the size of it, and if it's responsive size, meaning that it stays sort of on a grid lock when I resize it. The same thing here, we have our fill. So we definitely don't want it to be this orange anymore. By selecting that, that's going to tell me what the current hex is, or that color code. I'm going to go ahead and change it, and in general, because I have worked on this project before, I know that the correct hex is going to be this gray color. It's also here because I have established it with the theme. With that being said, I will go ahead and zoom out. And now we see straight gray all the way across. The next thing that I want to show you is the scrolling artboard. So we can see here, these are really static images. The user is going to, select, and they'll go from page to page, getting to read and make choices about the content that they're being displayed. On the other hand, we do have what is called a scrolling artboard. So this is obviously much longer, and whereas the other pages are static, users would be able to go ahead and hence the name, scroll through this particular page. So in order to make any artboard a scrolling artboard, I can go ahead and just click the name. So let me show you a difference. So if I were to just try to select it here, this is going to select the content of this page, but not the actual page itself. We're looking for, rather than this green outline, we're looking for that blue outline. That's really going to select the entire artboard. By looking at this arrow that's here, we have this bottom up and down arrow. We can simply drag it and make it as long as we want. Another intuitive thing is this little feature that we'll see here. So that's going to tell me that page 2.1 and page 3 are now the same length. And from there, I can add anything that I would like from the asset panel to give users a more enriched experience with this particular board. So in this case, I'm going to Control Z. That was merely for demonstrative purposes. And then that feeds us into our last component, which is sharing design preview. So, at a certain point when you are creating your prototype, whether you are the student or the instructor, you might want to preview, okay, what is the end user actually going to see on their device? By selecting this desktop preview, we can see what it would look like on the phone, because it is developed specifically for an iPhone 10. I can resize it, but it's always going to look like what it's going to look like on the phone. So from here, we can select, that connection that we made. we select Jim Crow laws, and that takes us to Plessy versus Ferguson. Another very useful feature for educators specifically might be this record button. So here I can record the interactions that I am having, what I'm clicking and what that leads to. That can be very useful for grading purposes rather than simply turning in the entire board. On the other hand, that's actually what I want to show you how to do. Before we use design and prototype, now we're going to use share. By selecting share, I can, rename it. By default, it is calling it flow 1, but you can name it whatever you would like. For the view setting, you'll notice that there are 5 different options, and they do all give very brief descriptions as to why you might select that one over another choice. With that being said, for educational purposes, I might select this presentation view, and I will keep it with anyone with the link. That'll let me update this link. This is an example of one that I did earlier today. And then I can simply select this button, and that'll copy my link. I can now email it. I can turn it into a Canvas discussion board. However I would like to share that, I can definitely do. With that being said, that is the last major component that we're going to be going over today. So with that, we are brought to the end of our presentation. I do want to say thank you very much for tuning in to this learning session. Again, we went over Adobe XD or experience design and really looked at the basics of task flows and prototypes. Thank you.